All right, so it's Todd Atkins, and we're here with another episode of MMA Conspiracy Hour, and we're going to touch on this recent accusations from Dan Hooker in regards to Islam Makhachev. You know, Dan Hooker said that Islam hired a doctor in Australia, like a local doctor, and they knew who it was apparently, or at least he said they had found out. Hooker said that, and he basically said that Islam got this doctor to give him an IV, but since then, I think this was a day or two ago, he hasn't produced nothing as far as proof. So Miguel, I just kind of want to let you start off with your opinions on this kind of, because a lot of people are running with this.
Well, I do think it's a serious accusation. That if Hooker didn't mean it seriously, he should have said so somewhere in the last day or so, because um, the reason he hasn't produced anybody himself is like, here's the nurse. It's like Dan Hooker isn't going to do a press conference. Some authority is probably going to handle it at that level if that is what plays out here. I saw where Makhachev's people came out and they said, he's a nobody and he's looking for attention, and that's really all that this is. And so they're putting Hooker down that way, but they're also not making it. They seem to be trying to limit the situation as well. They're not like, well, we're going to sue him or none of that. They're just like, he's an idiot and we're done. We don't want to talk anymore. So it's a very interesting situation. What did Hooker see? What is the root of his statement? I think that's key here. I think that's what somebody needs to really find out. Is he a joker or did he see somebody? I could give you a plausible scenario.
Yeah, why don't you just kind of give us your scenario?
Makhachev's at the championship level now. It means resources. And if he was going to do something like that, he's Russian, he's, Chechnyan. There are Russian Chechen people who've immigrated to, Australasia and in that area. And if he happens to know somebody in the medical, a nurse or somebody like that, it's very possible that he could have somebody, hook him up. And, the breakdown in the chain of command might be, the guy drives to work every day with an Australian friend, and the guy just happens to catch wind, and or a New Zealander or whatever, and maybe a little patriotism is stirred there, and they don't want the guy, so they put it up, or they call Hooker and say, hey, our one of the Russian nurses is doing dirty here. That's a very plausible situation, because you could see with Makhachev and Khabib before, these guys, maybe they bring a nurse with them. They travel with extensive entourage that the UFC doesn't pay for. They have their own funding and stuff like that, and they come with large groups of people, and you really don't have control over all of them. And that's what makes me afraid for USADA's involvement here. Yeah, they're not capable of really investigating something that could potentially be this deep.
Yeah, and I don't think there is an investigation going on regarding this, but it is a pretty serious, a specific accusation. Like, it's not like just some guy saying, I think this guy's on steroids. He was kind of like giving a very specific, scenario,
Yeah, I think I'd like to know. I think there's
Yeah.
enough that the statement warrants some type of closure. Either Hooker fesses up and says, look, I'm an idiot who opened his mouth, or if there's something to it. Again, that's my problem with it is who is the right body to investigate this, to say, okay, we're going to do an investigation. The UFC, USADA investigating a Russian and a guy with, maybe a New Zealand passport now, but Russia, two Russians who fought in New Zealand. How is an American company going to launch an investigation? Everybody related to that part of the collection process in this fight that was there from USADA, except for maybe a one or two people to oversee it, but everybody in the process, the guy going to get the sample and keeping the sample, putting the sample in the fridge, and the whole chain of command and everything, all those people, I'm pretty certain, are volunteers. And when you've got volunteers, slip a couple $100, it becomes a very difficult situation to investigate. They don't have the power to do it.
Yeah, why don't you expound on that a little bit? You're saying that the UFC used some volunteers. Is that what you're saying for as part of this show?
Okay. We could, I wonder what USADA's budget looks like. We go back to the old days, and there was, debacles where they sent the guy to collect the sample in Brazil, and he got the shuck and jive. People were leaving at the gym. This, that, the other thing. It turned into an odyssey where he got a sample and got it taken away, and the boxing commission down there, there were all kinds of stories there. So what happens is one person is not enough. You need a couple of people. Now at the event, you need people chasing him around. Hey, look, Makachev's checking in. Hey, we're going to need you to step over here before you get to your room and give us a sample. This is what that job is. Who is collecting them? Now, once they collect them, they got to put a little piece of tape on them, make sure that they don't get tampered with, wink, wink, and put it away, go upstairs. These things don't go into mini fridge. Whatever type of sample, it's probably urine, but they don't go into mini fridge. They do have to be taken to a clinic and, processed as a biological sample, correctly. So now they go to a clinic where they sit overnight with a security guard. It's just, there's too many people there that are not in the chain of command of the UFC and are not being paid by USADA to do this work. Because what do you pay a guy to chase a guy around for a sample all day? Now multiply that by the 20 fighters. Yeah, and USADA would have to have an infrastructure similar to a boxing commission in order to service everybody. So they show up with a one or two overseers, and then they have 4 or 5 people to chase down the 4 or 5 samples they want on that particular show. Now, keep in mind, they're also flying to locations and maybe getting samples for people that are off the fight, not at the fight show. But at the fight show, there's some policing that they have to do, right? So they don't have enough people. The boxing commissions used to do this. They used to collect the samples and run the steroid tests and stuff in New Jersey in the old days and things like that. I don't know how USADA plays into that. They probably work in conjunction with the commissions in the States, but we're not in the States. They really have no investigative authority in Australia that I know of, or New Zealand, anywhere in those countries there. They already have somebody who does that job there, I think. So yeah, it becomes a confusing situation, and unearthing the real truth here is what I see is going to be a real problem here. No matter what we hear, it's going to be hard to believe that we're getting the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, I could see if he gives details other than what he's given, like the name of the doctor, location where the guy works, that kind of stuff. But if Hooker's just going to sit there and not give any details, at some point you have to assume he's lying. And if he's lying, should he be held accountable?
Let me ask you a question. If you hit your wife, should you be held accountable? That's the world we live in, so Hooker could say Hooker didn't fight. He's kind of there hanging out, part of Volkanovski's entourage. He probably's got a pass to be around the octagon and be backstage and stuff. So he probably could be around, hanging around and stuff. But what if he said, I was just, I was drunk. I'm not meshing in again. Never say anything again. And it goes away. There will always be the seed there. Who would have been, let's say there was an allegation. Let's say the doctor did come forward. Let's say they found the bag in the garbage, the saline, whatever. Who's the right person to investigate it? There is nobody really. Of course, the UFC is going to put this let's put this over here in the no repercussions bin, right? It covers the Dana problem with slapping his wife. Now we got something else on top of it that we're ignoring. Who investigates this? USADA, also not qualified. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's going to be, there probably wouldn't be anyone who could, but if someone did have to investigate, if they had to pay somebody to investigate, then he should, and he's lying, then,
No, I agree. Yes, I agree that he may also get away with, yelling fire in the theater kind of thing, just saying something stupid that causes a problem, a little bit of Khabib, and I know Makachev's not Khabib, but the team over there, if they wanted to take it as a libel and lawsuit, we're in the fight world. People don't deal with things that way. But if that were, Hooker may have left himself open to that kind of thing, and he would deserve a little bit of trouble that way if he's lying, completely making it up. Something should come of it. But I don't think there's much of it. The real thing is, the way this would work in the States. Let's say there was a real allegation and there was a real problem in the States. The boxing commission should probably take over, and the boxing commission does have an extensive power of investigation, because at the end of the day, the boxing commission's answer, as far as I know, the structure, unless it's changed, or I don't think it's much different from state to state, but the boxing commission answers to the lieutenant governor. And the lieutenant governors are responsible for the ATFs and the police and the SWAT teams and stuff at the state level, the state cops. So how do you shut down an illegal prize fight? The boxing commission calls people on the same chain of command, on the same food chain, under the same boss, and the cops go and shut down the event. So will the New Zealand police determine that that this is a crime worthy of investigation and put a couple of people on it and be completely independent? Ask the questions that are hard, ethnic questions. Maybe he knew a Russian. Prove to me he didn't know a Russian nurse at some point that came aboard. If the nurse comes, if somebody comes forward and it's a name and it's not Russian, I'd be very surprised. And that part of the investigation is something I don't trust USADA to do. If Hooker were to be right, I think you mentioned it, that Makachev would be facing a 2-year suspension. He didn't want to serve a 2-year suspension in his prime. Nobody does. So, but to me, we can focus just on this, but the reason to be suspicious of the Russians is, the Sochi Olympics, which are right near Chechnya, and I believe Kadyrov, the guy who's in charge of Chechnya, had a lot to do with setting up those Olympics. And it's proven that they built a state-of-the-art clinic to handle all the blood tests and everything there. And instead of doctors, it was KGB agents, whatever, FSB, whatever they're called now. They were shadowing everybody. So it's a state-run program. They have a different thinking on it. It's not cheating to them. So do they have a tendency to accept it among themselves? Yeah, I think if they think differently, then they may be looking for a way around the rules. Now we have rules and we can't enforce them, so it all becomes a laughingstock. But I do think with the record of Russian athletes in tennis, in boxing, in many sports where they've come under question and under scrutiny, and in the Olympics specifically, where they've been banned from the Olympics, then, the deeper question has to be answered, or should be answered. It lends a little bit, maybe Hooker read the same news I did, and maybe that's where the statement comes from. No, they're all dirty, cheating dogs. You know what I mean? It's like that it could be that. And Makachev, like I said, he seems like a by the book guy, religious guy, no alcohol, things like that. A lot to admire in the way he carries himself. A lot to admire in the way that he competes. But if at the very core, he grew up under a different rule book where it's really not cheating to do this stuff, it's just getting yourself to the best possible condition, then yeah, maybe he said, hey, look, get me a sailing bag. It'll make me feel better. No one will notice. So again, he shouldn't have to carry the burden for the whole country. But I think what shows here glaringly is that there won't be an investigation of the level or quality that is needed to really find out what's happening here.
Now, if you were Hooker, would you feel pressure to come out with some stuff or no?
Yeah, Hooker's a veteran of the UFC stuff. He knows, at some point, especially, I don't think he's in the championship picture anymore, really. So at some point, you get the idea that attention is good one way or another. The UFC doesn't go down under that often, so you got to kind of take advantage of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Hooker says at the end of the day. The next time he's asked about this, is he just going to say no comment, or I was kidding, or no, somebody should look into that? Any one of those answers just is closed, and there's nothing else that's going to happen. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that that's more or less probably, if Hooker didn't actually see or know something, then that's the seed of it, is that there's doubt about those athletes from the worldwide scrutiny of the last decades. And sometimes you're looking for advantages and sometimes you talk.
Now, let's kind of shift gears a little bit, because I think we've kind of covered everything we can cover on this particular topic. I wanted to ask you about, I know we've talked about Power Slap quite a bit, but what I want, and I know you don't like this topic, but I did want to pick your brain about, a lot of people looked at the social media all the way up to the day of the UFC. And I'm talking even after the UFC was over. So it didn't like they shifted gears the day of the event. There was more Power Slap stuff on the UFC social media by far than there was UFC 284 stuff. What do you make of that?
You're sneaky, Todd. You're sneaky. You're sneaking this topic on me. Oh my God. You know, again, it's the thing. It's what we've determined is really going on here, is that there is a great mystery. It's like, a lapse that Dana hasn't had in his 20-year career. Maybe, you could point to like Sage Northcutt, where he kind of fell in love with a guy that, didn't cut out to be a UFC champion. And, there have been other guys that, haven't panned out, that he's been wrong about, and things like that. But he hasn't put, his push behind a particular fighter like anywhere near what he did with Power Slap. So this is an amazing lapse to be watching him and continue to do and not correct it. I have no other explanation. How can the UFC, why would the UFC now, which is run by Endeavor, now I saw somewhere where this Power Slap thing was a white Fertitta production of some type. So are they all three in bed to produce it? I mean, it takes the Fertitta's successful by every monetary measure, right? I mean, they sold the company for a lot more than they made. They already had enough money that, the brother that we don't hear about owns the Houston Rockets. So they were okay financially. And now they're behind this. If it was a Fertitta project, you might be excited. I don't know. I've heard too that they weren't the owners of the top A-line casinos either. That they kind of had that slumlord ad. So maybe this is, I don't know. No explanation for the Fertitta's presence. No explanation why Endeavor would allow their social media to dip this low. And what you said is a tragedy and a disrespect to what we do in MMA, that the proportions of it can't really be described. To me, they're huge. It's like, how does that happen? How do you have a 1-2 title match where Volkanovski, people were giving him a shot? It was a compelling fight. How can that receive so little attention compared to something that is so, bottom of the barrel and distasteful? It really, it still makes no sense to me. It still makes no sense. And the more, like, you peel back the, Endeavor, like you said, using their social media power, right? Because it's not like they have, we have 350,000, 360 next week. We're talking about millions already, right? Dana himself, millions of followers. Why are they stooping so low? I think they, a guy with that many followers should be able to be like, check out this fighter, like they did with the 17-year-old Rosa. And instantly he was everywhere. That's what they're accustomed to doing with their social media. And it's failed to do that every week with Power Slap, yet they continue to push it down our throats. And you continue to push it down my throat.
Is it because they paid for this stuff and this programming and they feel like they have to make this happen?
Look, business strategies at that level are not, are not my forte. They may be saying, no, we got to get our money back no matter what, or, go back in, or we're going to do a second season. Sometimes it is one forceful personality in there that's pushing it. Maybe Dana, maybe, someone behind the scenes.
Probably Dana.
Yeah, but Dana's the right personality to be pushy about it, ramming it kind of down people's throats. It's like, no, it's going to be big. No, it's going to be big. And he hasn't been wrong before. John Jones is going to be big. Khamzat Chimaev is going to be big. And to the people around him that are not experts in MMA, he really begins to, you get used to it. And then here he's just falling on his face. And it's like, there's really nobody that could say, look, enough, no, just no more, If you can pull the plug on the 155-pound division, Dana, way back when, you could pull the plug on Power Slap now. We forgive you.
Yeah, it's hard to understand. I mean, not just that this was a big fight. This was the number 1 and 2 guys pound for pound in the UFC. And it's almost like it was an afterthought promotionally.
Now, they're both foreigners. It wasn't held in the States. There are a couple of reasons why and those are all poppycock. You're absolutely right. This was a fight that they should have been behind. If not, how can you not be behind a fight like that when it really is? It's two of the most active and deep weight classes, fighting each other in a compelling fight. I think the guy who won was favored, and people expected him to win because he's bigger, but people wanted to see the fight, and they didn't get the attention it deserved. It got Demetrius Johnson-like attention. And, there's another one of those things that nobody calls the UFC on, but they may have let the best all-time fighter, technique-wise, go in the past already, for ego, too. They just let Jens Pulver into the Hall of Fame. And, what about Frank Shamrock? I think he was there before Jens, and, is almost, I don't have to go over Frank Shamrock's credentials, but it still is somebody saying this guy yes, this guy no, and that's just not the way that's the way they run their company, but that's just not the way you do things if you're doing things the right way.
Isn't Jens Pulver doing some stuff for the UFC on Twitch, and that's why this happened the way it did?
Whatever Jens did to get back on their radar, I'm sure it wasn't that degrading. Take a job, maybe apologize, or maybe go over a conversation or something, or maybe it was sink Monty, be like, look, I'm not making any money, and I don't like him anymore, or whatever. Whatever the situation is there, Jens deserves to be where he was solely on his fight credentials. So why did that have to go? Why any circus? Why did we have to wait all this time? When do they input people into this Hall of Fame? On a yearly basis, or when Dana decides? You know what I mean? It's like there's nothing really. This is just a little bit of a good thing. It's good. It's great for Jens, especially if he's able to put some money in his pocket and stuff, because there's a guy that for what he put into the sport didn't get out of it what he should have. So you like to see that, and they're doing the right thing, but it's just one minor example of them doing the right thing in a vast field of them not doing the right thing. So, that's the Jens Pulver situation. I don't know. I don't even know how we got there. But
yeah, what I mean is Frank Shamrock's never gonna work for the UFC.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's not,
And because of that, he'll never get in the Hall of Fame.
And how are those two statements like, why? Like, what's the logic? Like, what? So his accomplishments in the ring are diminished, and he's done nothing like get caught gambling on the sport. I don't know. Like in the case of Pete Rose, or in the case of baseball, they've kept people out of the Hall of Fame. Dana not liking you should not be a keep you out of the Hall of Fame level offense. I mean, as simple as that. And sometimes that not liking you may be because you were double crossed on a deal. I mean, there may be some legitimacy to it. But again, Dane is not the authority here. There should be some type of, governing situation of the greater good of the sport that tells you how to operate, and like I said, Jens, get paid, baby. Go get your money.
Yeah, he deserved to be there. Like you said, whether he is doing business with the UFC now or not, the spot he's in, he deserved to be there.
He earned it with the in the ring stuff. No doubt he should have been there in the first induction that they ever did, along with a bunch of other people that are not there. And, I mean, it's a different subject, but, the UFC is not even qualified to do a Hall of Fame or a museum because the sport's greater than them. There's more, especially from the history in the early days, than the UFC abroad and in the world. And they're trying to whitewash it, and it's not right, And the Jens thing is just one little chip in the other direction, but unless it comes with like a wholesale, like, yeah, reckoning with the real past of MMA and stuff, they're never going to do it. It's just a chip to look good.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to end on, kind of message for people that maybe are new to the sport. Miguel and I both, have a lot of history in it. And, this is part of it that doesn't get talked about enough. But, until the next time, until the next episode, this is a subject maybe we could get into sometime. And, I appreciate everyone checking out the MMA Conspiracy Hour. Until the next time, take care.